Hello, welcome to the self-learning platform by Dr. Sushma Singh. Today we are going to start Unit 9 Sovereignty with topic Kinds of Sovereignty. The term sovereignty has been used in many ways in political science that makes its comprehension very difficult. Therefore, it is necessary to understand its varied uses. The first one is real and titular sovereignty. A distinction is often made between real and titular sovereignty. In fact, this distinction came about due to a unique development in English constitutional system. Initially, the king was all powerful and actually exercised his powers. But with the development of democracy, the king was devoid of his powers and the parliament became supreme. However, the English people loved monarchy and did not abolish it. Instead, the powers of the king were transferred to an institution called the crown. The monarchy in England still exists, and all the powers are exercised in the name of the king or the queen, but the real sovereign is the crown. This distinction also exists in countries where the parliamentary form of government is prevalent, like in India, where the president is the titular head while the real sovereign is the prime minister and his cabinet. In a country like United States of America, no such distinction exists, as the president is said to be both real as well as the titular sovereign. But this distinction makes sovereignty more an attribute of the government rather than that of the state. Now, the next one is legal and political sovereignty. Another distinction is made between legal and political sovereignty. The legal sovereign is a constitutional concept, which means the identification of the holder or holders of power in the legal sense. There cannot be any confusion regarding the person or persons who exercise the power of sovereignty in the eyes of law. The legal sovereign commands and makes the law, and such commands and laws are to be obeyed by the people. In case of violation, it is equipped with the necessary powers to punish the offender. Legal sovereign is determinate, all comprehensive, and possesses coercive powers to implement its law and command. Thus, the authority of the legal sovereign is characterized by legal sanctity in which no individual or association can claim immunity. The best example of legal sovereignty is the British King in Parliament, which, as one political scientist puts it, may remodel the British Constitution, may prolong its life, may legalize illegalities, may give dictatorial powers of the government, may introduce communism, or may fascism entirely without legal restrictions. This position of British Parliament is also summed up in the saying that it can do everything except making a man a woman and vice versa, though it may do even that legally. Thus, the power of the legal sovereign is absolute, without any restriction. In contrast, the concept of political sovereignty is very vague and confusing. It is pointed out that behind the legal sovereign lies the political sovereign, to which the legal sovereign has to bow. Political sovereignty is not recognized by the law. It is not determinate also, in the sense that its identification is a very difficult task. Yet, its existence cannot be ignored. It influences and controls the legal sovereign. One writer has identified the political sovereign as the sum total of the all influences which lie behind the law. In a system of direct democracy where the people participate in lawmaking and decision making, the distinction between the legal and the political sovereign is blurred. But in a representative democracy, this distinction becomes obvious, where people participate in lawmaking and decision making indirectly through their representatives. In such cases, political sovereignty lies with the electorate, which has the power to make or unmake a government at regular intervals, where the elections are conducted. In fact, the elections are the best forum in which the will of the political sovereign is expressed. Now, the next point is de jure and de facto sovereignty. Often, the de jure sovereign and the de facto sovereign are the same because the person or persons holding political power are also recognized by the law. The distinction between the two becomes real in some situations of crisis, which may be the result of a coup or any other kind of violent overthrow of the government. For example, in Russia, the communists overthrew the Tsarist government, which the law recognized the latter as the holder of power. In reality, the former was in command and using the authority. Similarly, during the First and Second World Wars, many countries were defeated by Germany and the German rulers became de facto rulers. But the laws in the respective countries still recognized the overthrown government as the ruler. In 1971, as a result of liberation from Pakistan, Bangladesh became a new country, but as per the law, the Pakistani president was the de jure sovereign. In fact, a situation that rule of a de facto ruler is based upon force or on the fact that the situation is under his control. In contrast, the de jure sovereign has the legal sanctity to rule. However, this distinction between the two remains for some time, and ultimately they become one. The de facto rulers makes the necessary changes in the law of the land and thus becomes the de jure rulers also. The next topic is concept of popular sovereignty. Modern democracy is based on the concept of popular sovereignty, which means that the source of all authority is the people. J.J. Rousseau is credited with espousing it in modern times. But earlier also, the concept of popular sovereignty was not unknown. In medieval times, Cirico points out that the state was people's affair. He held that the state was a moral community, a group of persons and the authority aroused from the collective power of the people. Later on, Malthus also said that the people as a corporate body held sovereignty and this power could not be transferred to any other person or organization. Augustus forcefully argued that the people as a corporate body held sovereignty and this power could not be transferred to any other person or organization. Augustus forcefully argued that the people as a corporate body gave powers of administration to the administrators through a contract for specific purposes, and the power would go back in case they forfeit it due to any reason. Alsace also gave the people the right to resist tyranny. Similarly, John Locke also based his civil society on the basis of consent of the people. According to him, the government existed for the welfare of the people and there could not be any arbitrary rule. To Locke, government was a trustee constituted through a social contract for the protection of life, liberty, and property of the people. If the government failed in its duty of protecting the life, liberty, and property of the people, they had a right to rebel against it and overthrow it. But Rousseau is considered the father of the concept of popular sovereignty. According to the Rousseau, men by their very nature are free and equal, and the system of government has to be based upon the free will of man. This in turn can be achieved when the individual enters into a contract with each other, as a result of which they become an indivisible part of a body of sovereign people, which has the supreme power of lawmaking. Rousseau also made a clear distinction between the state and the government. To him, the government is merely an agent of the state having a limited authority. In fact, it is the people who have delegated the power to rule to the government, and this power can be withdrawn by their will. This will of people becomes sovereign in Rousseau's state, to which Rousseau gave the name of general will. In Rousseau's scheme, the sovereign can only act for the welfare of the people. He writes, "It is impossible for the sovereign body to hurt its members. The sovereign, for its part, cannot impose upon members any fetters that are useless to the community." According to Ashirvatham, the concept of popular sovereignty contains the following valuable ideas. Government does not exist for its own good. It exists for the good of the people. If people's wishes are deliberately violated, there is a possibility of revolution. Easy means should be provided for a legal way of expressing public opinion. Government should be held directly responsible to the people through such means as frequent elections, local self-government, referendum, initiative, and recall. Government should exercise its authority directly in accordance with the laws of the land and not act arbitrarily. The concept of popular sovereignty was accepted as the basic principle of governance in the American and French Revolution. The American Declaration of Independence expressly declared, "We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuits of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men and deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. The Declaration clearly recognized the people's right to alter or abolish any government which was destructive of the inalienable rights of people, life, liberty, and pursuits of happiness. The Declaration also noted the fact that the British king had become a tyrant by his acts and therefore unfit to be the ruler of a free people. The French Revolution declared men are born and remain free and equal in rights. It also pointed out that the right to liberty, property, security, and resistance to oppression are the aim of any political association, and the law is expression of general will, and all citizens have the right to take part personally or through their representatives in its formation, and that all officials of the state are responsible to the people. The concept of popular sovereignty is very attractive, but it is surrounded with vagueness. It is very difficult to explain it in practical terms. It is good to say that the people are the basis of any political system and their will must be reflected in the governance. But the question is, what does the term people mean? How do we identify them? Obviously, the entire mass living in a state cannot be identified as people because there are infants, invalids, criminals, insolvent, aliens, and others who cannot have any participation in the political system. If they constitute people, then the concept as such does not make any sense at all. Even the electorate cannot be called as the people because they do not constitute a political entity. Further, all people do not participate in the election, then the elections are won on the basis of majority. So, does it mean that we should equate people with majority of the electorate? In any case, the number of electorate in any country is very small in comparison to the total population, and they cannot be regarded as legally sovereign. In fact, the more we go into the details, it is only confusion and nothing else. If we study the dynamics of modern democracy, we find that a voter is subjected to many influences and manipulations. People choices are manufactured in the modern age of science and technology, and democracy has become infected with mobocracy. Popular sovereignty may be successful in a small state with a system of direct democracy, where the people directly participate in lawmaking. It may also be reflected in devices such as the referendum. But the modern state is a big state with a huge population. It is also a fact that the business of modern state has become too complex and it cannot be run on the basis of referendum. The concept of popular sovereignty creates another problem. In the present system of democracy, the ruling elites as well as the opposition claim to be reflecting the will of the people, and in such cases it becomes increasingly difficult to discover the truth. And if the concept of popular sovereignty is implemented legally, then it may lead to instability in the government. Yet, all said and done, the concept of popular sovereignty has made a permanent contribution in political science, because besides advocating the idea of popular control over the government, it is a strong repudiation of dictatorship and totalitarianism. Here we want to wind up today's lecture. Thank you so much for your attention.